Mr. Scott Anthony, thank you for you just flying from the US yesterday, so you were here for the forum. I wanted to ask you, you've been based in Asia before for InnoSight. You're still a senior advisor for them, if I understand correctly. How do you judge now the level of innovation in Asia and especially in Japan? You know, there's this debate in Japan, is Japan still, can still innovate with disruption, or are they focused only on incrementation? In the past, they have created the Prius, the first hybrid car, the first electric car with Nissan, the Leaf, the CMOS sensors. There's a lot of innovation that came from Japan in the 80s, 90s. But lately, we felt that maybe it's tougher for them to catch up with the last disruptive innovation. Is it a generational change? How do you judge the capacity of Japan to still being able to innovate and create disruption in the world?
You know, it's a really great question, Adam. If you look back to the post-World War II era, of course, much of Japanese's economic growth was driven by young companies that pioneered new businesses, pioneered new business models, and drove very disruptive growth around the world. Hugely successful, transformed the economy. It's hard to do that. It's even harder when you're successful to continue to do that. So I think the Japanese challenge over the past 2 decades is essentially how do established companies learn how to do that again. And I think you are starting to see some examples of it where the large established companies have said, yes, we need to continue to run the current engine and also go and do new things. Some of the automobile manufacturers, electronics companies, financial companies, et cetera, have shown that they can do that. And you have more vibrant startups beginning to emerge. And of course, SoftBank has been behind many of these things. So I think the story is really changing a lot in Japan. But of course, it's playing catch up in the region because China has gone so far, so fast in its innovation, and India is not far behind. So the game only gets harder as you continue to play it. I've seen great signs of progress in the last decade. There needs to be a lot more in the decades ahead, for sure.
But is it difficult to innovate when you are an old company who have been in the business for tens and tens of years? Would it be more difficult for Toyota today or Toshiba? Why were they so successful at innovating 30 years ago and now it seems to be more difficult? What happened?
So a couple things. First, it's important to remember there are lots of different forms of innovation. So there are innovations that make your current business better. There are innovations that transform that business. There's innovations that disrupt it. The older you are, the more established you are as a company, the harder it is to disrupt yourself. And let me give you a kind of silly metaphor to reinforce why that's hard. There's a guy named Destin Sandlin who did a program called Smarter Every Day, where in one of his episodes, he told engineers, do something to my bike. I want you to change it so when I turn to the left, the bike goes to the right, and when it turns to the right, it goes to the left. His question was, how long would it take him as an adult to learn how to ride a backwards bike? It turned out it was 8 months of careful practice. Why? First, you have to unlearn, then you learn. He then had his 6-year-old son that had just learned how to ride a bike do the exact same thing. How long did it take him? 2 weeks. You have less unlearning, greater neuroplasticity. You get the metaphor. If you're a large company, the problem is before you do the new thing, you have to unlearn the old thing. And in the middle of that change, it looks really, really messy. And big organizations, they don't tolerate mess very well. I really learned this when I lived in Singapore. Singapore, a fantastic place. It's just not messy enough for innovation to really, truly flourish. You need a little bit of mess if there's going to be innovation.
But you can still create innovation in an aging society when you see your management, your R&D, your researchers, you have less and less young blood coming in the company. You can still manage to force yourself?
Absolutely. So I wrote a book now 8 years ago called Dual Transformation. And the basic idea in the book is if disruption's at work in your industry, and it's at work in every industry today, you have to do 2 things, dual transformation. Transformation 1 is to transform your current business. Transformation 2 is to create a new business. You create space to do that, whether you're young, whether you're old, whether you've got new blood, old blood, you can do both of those things once you recognize that you have 2 fundamentally different tasks as a leader. And of course, in an aging society, you have new opportunities as well. You have new opportunities in industries such as how do you help the aging population age in place, healthcare, and new forms of social connection that can be great feedstock for innovation if you think about it in the right way. So it doesn't really matter to me what the generational makeup of your workforce is. There are opportunities there as long as your organization is structured the right way and thinking the right way.
How can AI help those companies who maybe are struggling at the moment with new innovation or to implement those changes? We talk a lot about AI, but do actual LLMs, large language models, can really help, or do we rely too much? Because every company now has a new AI program, but we don't see any concrete stuff coming out. And how does it change? Will AI disruption will disrupt innovation, you think, or is it too much? And we have to keep humans working with AI, try and fail, and maybe something will come back. Is it too much at the moment?
So it's a really simple question with a very easy answer. Well, let me start with this. So Sir Francis Bacon back in the 17th century said, you can draw a line in history, before gunpowder, after gunpowder, before the compass, after the compass, before the printing press, after the printing press. I would argue that generative AI is the same sort of thing, where we will look back and say, before, after, there's a line. Now the challenge is, in the middle, it's messy, and you don't know exactly what's going to change, and that's where we are right now. Will large language models have transformational impact on many tasks, on many roles, on many industries? Of course. I taught a class earlier this year. If you're a consultant, how do you use generative AI to give advice? My primary takeaway is someone who spent 2 decades in the industry, the world of consulting is going to blow up and reassemble. It will be completely transformed. So you're going to see things like this that happen. Exactly how, I think, is still to be determined. The number one thing I think organizations need to really spend more time on is not the technology. Of course, you need to make the investments in the technology, but it's more the human side of change. Research suggests for every dollar, euro, yen you spend on technology, you have to spend 7 times that amount on the human side of change. It's not a technology problem, it's a sociological problem, and you don't make the investments in the humans, you're going to miss out.
But investment in the humans on every aspect, or to tell them how to play, to work, to discover AI?
Yes, yes, yes. So absolutely to play, to work, to discover, also on things like ethical responsibility and how do we think about what we turn over, what we don't. The idea that there's a human in the loop. Where is the human in the loop? What role do we give the human in the loop? How do we develop new expertise? Large language models can spit out amazing work quickly, but if you haven't gone through the struggle of doing something like that, I remember as a young consultant being annoyed that I had to take interview notes and do a basic model. And of course, you can do that like that today. But if you haven't gone through the struggle of doing the menial work, you don't develop the instincts to be able to say this matters versus that matters. So every single aspect of it. One thing that I think is important too is that it feels less like work and more like fun. Things that feel like work, people don't like doing. Things that feel like fun, people easily adopt and begin to play around with. And one of the beauties of generative AI and large language models is if you allow yourself to do so, you can have a lot of fun with them. It's a very human technology, yet people often get really scared when they start to use it. The class that I taught is filled with MBA students who are in their late 20s. The class was an experimental class. It was taught pass-fail. There was literally zero risk. And still, people are in the class and I can see them tense up and I say, relax, have fun. Imagine you're chatting to a friend, see what will happen. Ethan Mollick from the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania advises people to spend 10 hours essentially just screwing around with AI to see what it can do. You do that, you have fun with it, all of a sudden things look a lot different.
And within a company, so you would advise managers to let everybody play with AI, not only your R&D team, because at the moment it's very segmented. R&D is doing research, marketing is selling, and so you would let everybody, you would encourage everybody to discover AI and see in what his field, in his own field, how he could improve his task and his daily work?
100%. Now, of course, with guardrails, so you have to be sure that you're not pouring customer-sensitive data or you're not allowing AI to make decisions that are premature and all that. So creating essentially a sandbox with the right toys in it without too many rules where people can go in and go mess around. This is not an easy thing. There was one organization that I was asked to come and give a talk to 200 leaders about AI. And they said, AI is the future of the company. And I said, well, I'm going to tell them all to play around with AI at work. They said, oh, no, we're not allowed to use AI at work. I said, well, if you're saying AI is the future of the company, and you're telling people they can't use AI at work, don't you see there might be a little bit of a problem here? So this idea, again, of saying, yes, We might have mission critical applications where we're not going to have AI touch at all. And we're going to have things that people do that don't touch any of our applications where they can do whatever they want. And the point isn't to deliver. This is not a performance where someone's judging you. It's not even a practice. It's just to play around and just see what happens. Because we don't know what the rules are yet. If you don't know the rules, you don't know what to practice. You don't know how to measure a performance. So let people, just like my 8-year-old son, just have some free, unencumbered play and, again, see what happens. And yes, if it's just done in R&D, to me, that is a big problem. It needs to be done everywhere.
So you advise everybody to use AI, not only in pharmaceuticals where it could help to develop a vaccine faster. You think every technology, every segment of the economy should play with it?
You know, everybody has something just about. You know, I think if you're doing a manual job, perhaps less so. But if you're in a knowledge work area, there are tasks that AI can help you with, whether it is synthesizing research, helping you write a report, helping you do an email, helping you summarize notes from a meeting. That kind of baseline stuff that people waste a lot of time on can be done very quickly with the help of AI. And then, what I use AI for often is a way to stretch, a way to brainstorm, a way to push, a way to provoke, a way to say, well, what about this? Or can you imagine how this person would respond to it? AI never gets tired. AI will take on infinite perspectives. AI will always be my friend. A lot of what AI gives me, I discard because it's kind of meaningless noise, but it's a very simple way, without being schizophrenic, for me to have multiple personalities. And that's a pretty cool thing.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.